Here's two guns you're going to get in a shooting today. Are you going to pick up this one or are you going to pick up this one? No, man, you're going to pick up the one with the light, the nice optic, threaded barrel, longer barrel, higher magazine capacity, right? I got 20 something rounds in this gun versus 10. Welcome to Christian Warrior Training. I'm Keith. If you love Jesus and you love guns, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, like, follow, leave a comment because I love reading your comments and I love hearing what you have to say. In this episode, we're going to talk about setting up a CCW team or concealed carrier team within your church. We're going to talk about everything under the sun, from understanding legal requirements, even if you are in a constitutional carry state, which for those who don't know, constitutional carry means I don't need the government's permission to carry a gun. Even if you're in a constitutional carry state, there are some legal requirements because there is a difference between you doing a constitutionally protected right, meaning just carrying a gun, and you going on the offense to protect people at your church because you're being attacked. There's two totally different things. We're going to talk about selecting the right personnel. Just because you can carry a gun doesn't mean that you're the best person to go on the offense and protect all those people in there. We'll talk about all the pros and cons of picking people. We're going to talk about training qualifications, what kind of training you should have, what kind of qualifications you need. Look, even if you've never been a cop, even if you've never been in the military, it doesn't matter. The difference between you and them is that they have a lot of training, a lot of practice, a lot of rounds downrange. And you can get that. We can give you a bunch of training and we can give you a bunch of experience by shooting. But the one thing you won't have that they do is experience in critical events. But we can make up for that through stress inoculation and reality-based training, which I have other videos on that you can go look at. We're going to talk about weapon selection because some of you guys are carrying some really funky things out there. And we're going to talk about what makes a good gun for this and what doesn't. There is a difference between carrying a gun because you have a constitutional right to do so and carrying a gun to go on the offense to shoot within a crowded building to stop a bad man from killing everybody. They're two totally different things. We're going to talk about ammunition considerations because you guys are carrying some really weird ammunition stuff. This is going to be a whole episode on its own, but I'm just going to do a super quick, down and dirty, how to pick some ammo. We're going to talk about holsters because, again, you guys are carrying some really weird holsters and we want to make sure that you're doing the right thing because there is a difference between exercising a constitutional right and then worrying about somebody getting your gun and shooting you because you went on the offense and are fighting with somebody. And then lastly, we're going to talk about operational protocols. That means when do you pull your gun? When do you not pull your gun? When do you have to shoot somebody? Deadly force. We're going to talk about all those things. It is going to be a good episode. So first off, let's talk about why we even need this in the first place. Look, you need it because go look at my Hezbollah video where I talked about Hezbollah is going to hit the United States. We don't know when. We've had that information for a very long time. And then you have the lone actors, the lone wolves that are going to go out and do harm. Churches are the places that they're going to want to go to. Why? Because you're all packed in tight. You're all sitting in one place waiting to get slaughtered. We're not going to be afraid and not worship. We're not going to be afraid not to go to church, but we're not going to be dumb either. Look, I get 1 million views a month off of this right here. I get another 200,000 views off my newsletter. If you should be checking out my newsletter at christianwarriortraining.com. So you're looking at 1.2, 1.3 million people every month listening to my message. Chances are something bad is going to happen to one of you. Is it going to be you or is it going to be the other guy that's watching this? You don't know. You better be prepared. So part of that preparation is carrying a firearm. Now, we're going to talk about the biblical perspective of carrying a firearm at the end of this. And we're going to hash it all out and talk about what the Bible says about carrying a firearm. All right, let's talk about legal requirements. Now, you have to abide by your state laws and some federal laws, even in constitutional carry states. Now, some states, I'll give you an example, California, the most restrictive, and then we'll talk about Idaho, which has no restriction. Let's start with California. In California, is much like New York, and a lot in Chicago, Illinois, those states, you are going to need some kind of a permit to carry conceal, but it doesn't stop there. There's also requirements, state licensing requirements for security guards. Now, you can get away with maybe saying the church is private property. So in California, if I saw you carrying a gun in the church on behalf of the church, I'm not going to worry too much about it as a cop because number one, I really don't care. But number two, it's private property and you can carry on private property. That's why you see guys carrying guns in gun stores. What it's going to come down to is you need to look at what are the security requirements, the licensing requirements. As an example, in California, you're more than likely going to need a guard card, meaning a license to be a security guard. There are some exemptions. I don't know exactly what they are because I never had to deal with that. But if you are going to be a security guard, you have to open carry and you have to get a permit, qualify, and do a whole bunch of stuff to do that. I believe for California people, it's Consumer Affairs that handles all that. So you can go to Consumer Affairs and go find out, right, and go figure it out. But you may need a guard card in addition to any other licensing that comes up, right? Just because you have a concealed carry permit because you live in a good county in California doesn't mean you can now carry as a security guard. There are some restrictions on there. So you're going to have to look into that. Each state is different. Now, if you're in a state like Idaho, Wyoming, what have you, you have constitutional carry. Yes, you can just carry a gun concealed and nobody cares. I'm going to throw something out to you and some of you may not like it, but this is my own personal opinion from seeing people get sued, myself being sued, and then friends getting sued because of shootings. I think it would help you that even in Idaho where we have constitutional carry, I have my concealed carry permit, my enhanced, because we have different levels. I have that because it just looks good in court. So our church, we require you to have an enhanced concealed carry permit. Why? Because you get a background check, number one, and we know that that background check is a little bit better than what the church does because they look a little bit deeper into things. The other thing it does too is it has set qualifications and set standards. Does it really matter? I don't think so really, but when you go to court, it's a big deal. If you shoot somebody and now you're sitting in court somewhere, it's just, you can come and say, yeah, it's constitutional carry, but I still had a license to carry. And it just shows you're going above and beyond. And it's the jury who you're trying to convince, and they have a belief that that's a good thing. All right, then you're going to want to select the right personnel. Now, look, you're going to have to set up some kind of criteria about who it is that you're going to pick. Now, there's a difference, like here in Idaho, I can conceal carry without any kind of a permit. But that's for me to exercise my constitutional right. Exercising a constitutional right is different than a man firing it up in the church and now you have to stop and keep him from actively killing all of your friends and loved ones and going on the attack. You're going to need to practice. You need to shoot a lot, train for that specific scenario. And most importantly, you have to have the maturity. When we do live action training, I see that a lot of concealed carriers buckle and not engage because they haven't been practicing, they haven't thought about these things, they haven't been through training, and most importantly, they don't have the maturity to continue forward and impose their will upon the bad man that's doing bad things. You have got to pick the right people. Just because you can't carry a gun doesn't mean you get to carry it on behalf of the church, because now the church has some liability for those actions. This isn't like the bro club where we pick my bro because I like him and he's got a cool gun and we shoot all the time. No, it's, does that guy have what it takes when we're all under fire to go ahead and press forward and stop that person? So you're going to have to select the right people. You need to have the right training qualifications. Now, we qualify once a year. I think it should be more, but it's a volunteer organization, so it's kind of tough. I set up a qualification standard that works best for my church, meaning we're shooting within my church. We know that the shooting is going to occur there. That's where my qualification should be. A lot of you are using FBI qualifications, your local police department. Those are set up for sworn law enforcement officers in varying environments that could be a subway, an airplane, a very rural area that's wide open, and you're taking shots that are above 100 yards. You're going to shoot in a space filled with a lot of people congregating that has walls, and on the other side of those walls are children. So our qualification, everything is 15 yards and in. It includes malfunctions and clearing malfunctions. It includes mag changes. Most importantly, you have to have 100%. Why? Because every round that misses is $1 million round, meaning you just got sued because you hurt somebody that you weren't supposed to. And now that you get sued, it's $1 million. If you're lucky, it's only $1 million. So we call it the $1 million round. You're responsible for all that. So if you want to see what we use for our training and qualifications, go ahead over to courses.christianwarriortraining.com. You can go look at our qualification. I have a video where I've shown our qualification course, why we're doing what we're doing, and then you can download the qualification course. I recommend that you look at what your church has and figure out what you're going to use for a qual course. I do not recommend using your local police department or the FBI. What they're doing is completely different than what you're doing. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you do update training constantly. One of the things that we're going to be doing in our church is that we're going to be setting up airsoft within the church so we can shoot within the church. So we'll set up shoot, no shoot targets throughout the church. And then our people are going to come through with airsoft guns to go engage all that. What I like about that is if they ever have a shooting in the church, they've been in 100 shootings by the time there is one, and it's all natural for them. And they also know to be careful and not You got to worry about stray rounds and so on. All right, next up is weapon selection. I have seen some crazy stuff show up at the range, and I'll give you an example. The High Point E cannon is not an appropriate gun to have. This thing malfunctions constantly. And I know we're all laughing right now because it is a hunk of junk. But seriously, I've seen baby Desert Eagles. I've seen really budget guns, which I did if you go over to my other channel, 2A Cops Supporting Gun Rights, we did a budget gun test. And we found that the best budget gun was a Palmetto State Armory, which is basically a Glock 19 for $250. This costs $130. Spend $120 more and buy basically a Glock or buy a used one. But we want to make sure that we carry a modern firearm. But the other thing too is the size of the firearm. So this is a Glock 43X. A lot of people like carrying these. I got a red dot on it. All these weapons have been cleared. Don't bash me in the comments about it. I've cleared everything before we started. The problem with it is a great gun to conceal carry, but if you're gonna get in a gunfight for your life around a bunch of other people, do you want something small like this? Or would you rather have something larger like this, okay? So the longer the barrel and the farther the sights are from each other, the more accurate you're gonna be. So if I said, hey, here's two guns, and pick whichever ones you want, right? Here's two guns, you're gonna get in a shooting today. Are you gonna pick up this one, or are you gonna pick up this one? No, man, you're gonna pick up the one with the light, the nice optic, threaded barrel, longer barrel, higher magazine capacity, right? I got 20 something rounds in this gun versus 10. I have a red dot optic, that's nice, but it's like a super short 3-inch barrel. We carry this because it's comfortable. It feels like I can go operate every day and it's like it's not there. This is uncomfortable. This is ginormous. But again, if I told you you're gonna be in a massive shootout with an active shooter today, pick your gun. Oh man, it's not gonna be this. It's gonna be this. In fact, you're gonna want this to fight your way to that rifle, right? Because it's an active shooter and you're gonna want that rifle to go to town, right? I want you to keep that in mind. I see a lot of people show up with the little gun, and that little gun is fine. It's comfy. It's gonna do fine, right? But everybody I talk to that gets into a shooting, I ask them, do you wish you had a bigger gun? Every time. Look, man, when I was a full-time cop working on SWAT, I carried a Glock 35. It was a 40 cal, which I hate 40 cal, but that's my only option. But it was a very long barrel. I had a flashlight. I had an optic. It was pretty comparable to this because I knew one day I would be in a shooting and I want the biggest gun I can have, right? You're gonna want, a lot of people, I have some boomers, no offense to the boomers, that will show up with a revolver. Now this is a great revolver. I was issued this when I first started as a cop in 1990, and I quickly went to an auto. The problem with this is you have a super long trigger pull, okay? And then you only have 6 rounds. And then to reload, I've got to open this, pop it out, go either load individually or take my speed loader, put it in, and now I've shot 12 so far when I don't have to reload and have 20 something. And if I do reload, it's gonna lock back. I'm just gonna dump the mag, put a new one in, and I'm back into the fight, right? And I can have a light, I got an optic, and I know there's some people like, oh, I can do that on my revolver, whatever. Again, if I say you're gonna be an active shooter, you can pick whatever gun you want. You're gonna go over here because 20 is better than 6, and my reloads are faster, right? So I do have a video earlier that talks about what is a good gun to carry at church. Is one of my more popular videos. I suggest you go back and look at and figure out what gun you're gonna pick. Okay, next up is ammo selection. Okay, I have seen some people show up with ball ammunition. Ball ammunition is just that. It's just a solid slug. This is gonna fly through the person, come out, hit a wall, and go through the wall. I'll give you an example. I have seen people get shot by this, and I've seen the rounds go through the people and then go through a wall. This is, and I know a lot of people are like, well, oh, for the love of God, please don't do this. I do see people that will load 1 round ball and then 1 round hollow point, okay? I don't want, and they'll literally load every other one. I don't know where that comes from. Please don't do that. I see people in gangs, like in drug dealers and those people doing violence upon regular people. They do that and their guns malfunction constantly. And besides, you're gonna want to have a good modern hollow point. This is I got a Spear Gold Dot I like that. And why do I pick that one in particular? Because the police have used it a lot and they have killed a lot of people with it, and it has stayed within the body. It's got great data to go with it. Now, a lot of people want to do some unique ammunition. As an example, I have some G9 specialty ammo. This ammo was given to me by G9 to evaluate, and I'll evaluate it soon. It is a 77 grain round, often called a reverse hollow point. There's data that the company has done. I like G9, don't get me wrong. I like G9. I like their ammo. I like the idea of this ammo. And they've done testing and the testing looks great. But there's not been a lot of shootings with it. Whereas this Spear Gold Dot has had quite a few. So you're gonna go with the one that you know has dumped a lot of people, or you're gonna go with the one that has great data from the company, but hasn't dumped a lot of people yet. And so you're not sure what's going to happen with it. I'm going to go with the one that has been proven. I think that's the smart and prudent thing, but you want a good modern hollow point. Right now, I think one of the best ones is that Spear Gold Dot, because it works great. You don't want to use some unknown. You don't want to be like, well, I saw this on YouTube and it looks good, which is what I'm doing here now. But look at the data. Don't take my word for it. Go look at the data from actual shootings. Not this person did some testing, Grantham did this testing over here. Talking about which ones are killing people, and then look at the data from those shootings. That's how I select ammo. Next up is holsters. Let's talk about holsters and what makes a great holster. Okay, a lot of you are doing something like this, an in the waistband holster that goes in like this in your appendix carrying. That's awesome. That can work, but here's what I want to ask you. If you get into a fight and that person feels the gun, how easy is it to take away from you? Super easy. And I have experience in this. I was a police officer. I was working plainclothes. I was in a narcotics unit. I was carrying a holster much like this, an outside the waistband holster. And I ended up getting in a fight with the person. They grabbed my gun from me and we fought for the gun for the next 5 minutes. I was by myself, or I'm sorry, I had a partner, but we both asked for help on the radio and we got nothing. And it wasn't until a concerned citizen called 911 and said, hey, this guy's trying to shoot a cop. He needs some help, that we got everybody. But I almost died that night, and my partner too, because I wasn't carrying the proper holster for a fight. You have to look at what you're going to be dealing with. Now, look, most churches, you're not getting in fights where somebody's going to take your gun. So you have to decide what works best for you. For me personally, I use an outside the waistband holster, a Kydex holster. I do like this. It does not have any retention, but I have training now. I did not back then. I have training now for retention, and I'm not a cop anymore. I'm not going to go on the offense. I don't care. If that guy wants to go be a fool, I'm going to wait for the cops to get there and take care of business. So I'm not fighting. I'm not doing any of this stuff anymore. So I think that works well. If you are in a state and that state requires that you carry externally, like California, I think that's where you're going to be at, okay? You want to carry a modern holster that is held externally. This is a Safariland. I love this holster. When you put it in, it locks in place. You can't pull it out. To get this out, you have to hit the magic button to get it out. There's just one level of retention. With that said, this is an Alien Gear level 3 holster. It's going to pop open, you drop it in, and then you flick the hood up. You cannot get this out. You have to push a button, pull a lever, and then get it out. If you don't do any of those combinations of things, it's not coming out. So if you have to carry a gun externally, invisible, do not, under any circumstances, carry an outside the waistband holster that has no retention, or the retention is a snap. Don't do that. You're looking to get hurt. I am going to do over on 2A Cops Supporting Gun Rights. I'm going to do a video on the proper way of carrying, because you have some responsibility. You're going to need what I would do if I had to carry out in the open like that in a not law enforcement, in a security type setting. I'm carrying this because it takes a lot to get that out. What you're not seeing is there's a little thumb brake in here. So I've got to press a button, still doesn't come out. I've got to pull the lever back and then draw it at the same time. So my relationship with Alien Gear, they gave me that holster. They gave me a couple other holsters to evaluate and to talk about. There was no money exchanged. They don't know if I'm going to say anything good or bad. And I got to tell you, I hated alien gear holsters, but they have upped their game in the last year or two. And that external holster they have now, I know a lot of guys are carrying it on duty. That thing's money. I like it a lot. Next up is your operational protocols. Now, you have to establish clear rules of engagement for concealed carriers. You're going to have to put them through some type of a deadly force class. If you want, you can head over to courses.christianwarriortraining.com. I have a class on use of force. If you are carrying a weapon, you have got to have some kind of training. Now, this is minimum training. This is just me talking like this about use of force. I really recommend that you get that. I think that is professional use of force training, but I recommend that is not the only class you take, that you actually take much more training than that. So you've got to talk about use of force, when you can draw your weapon. When are you going to allow somebody on your team to draw a weapon on somebody? Now, I give you an example. As a cop in California, I drew my gun multiple times, probably once a shift, depending on what I was doing. Pointing it at somebody was probably a couple times a week, depending on what was going on or how busy we were. And I was pointing guns at them because I was told, hey, that guy just robbed a bank, or that guy just pointed a gun at me, or that guy did whatever. Well, if a churchgoer comes up to me and says, that man just pointed a gun at me, I'm not going to be coming over going, hey, sir, how are you doing today? Let's talk. No, I'm going to be coming up and going, let me see your hands right now, right? Or I'm just going to call the police and let the police do what they're going to do, and I'm just going to watch what's going on and then let the police take him off. But if he comes back into the church, I don't want him coming back into the church, and I might just go, hey, you need to step back. Don't come into the church. I understand you have a gun pointed at somebody. I need you to walk away. Go, right? Because from here to here is a lot quicker than going like this, coming up, and then getting ready. And don't use a revolver. It's just what I have on my desk. So there's a lot to when you're going to pull your gun, point your gun, do all that kind of stuff. It's really important you have some kind of SOPs or standard operating procedure. We are going to put out some standard operating procedures that you can use as a guide here at Christian Warrior Training. So just keep an eye out for that. You might want to sign up for the newsletter so that way you get updates every week and find out what's going on. Last thing, you're just going to do an ongoing assessment, and you're going to look at what's worked, what hasn't. As an example, our qualification was changed based off ongoing assessment. We realized this was not working. It was made for a rural county deputy in Idaho and not for a church security team member, so we changed things up. We're still looking at that to see if we need to continue on with that and if that's the right way to do things. We have changed some rules about who can carry, who cannot carry. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to carry, or I'm not going to work for you if I can't carry. If that's your attitude, then we really aren't sure we want you there. Because if you're only doing this to carry a gun, then your heart's not in the right place. So last up, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Bible says about having guns at church. Okay, now, pro tip, it doesn't say anything about firearms because firearms weren't invented when the Bible was written. But there are some things that we can look at. And I'm going to look at all perspective, okay? I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at what some people view as, this is my permission to carry a gun. I'm looking at others that say, no, you should work things out peacefully and rely on God for your protection. I'm going to look at it all. This is the most important part. I am not a chaplain, not a pastor, not a minister. I'm just a guy that was a cop for 30 years. That has a lot of experience in protecting people, and I have experience working church security teams. I'm trying to look at scripture more, and I'm trying to talk about scripture more, because it's not something that I think I'm really good at, but I think it's super important, and I can't imagine doing a video without talking about what the Bible says. So do me a favor. Listen to what I have to say. I could be right, I could be wrong. Go discuss it with your pastor and hear what he or she has to say. My pastor is going to watch this, and I know we're going to debrief it the next day, and he's going to either tell me right on or, hey, dummy, need to do this different. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I want you to have those conversations. Hash it out in the comments too. When we look at principle of self-defense and defense of others, Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 13-14 says, when the Israelites were rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem under threat, Nehemiah stationed people by families with their swords, spears, and bows. Now, this passage is sometimes cited to support the idea of being prepared and equipped to defend oneself and one's community. Again, I want you guys to hash it out. I'm not a biblical scholar. I'm just bringing some things up that came up during my research. Exodus 22, verses 2 and 3 said that the law concerning a homeowner defending their house from a thief, indicating that there is a place for self-defense within biblical law. With that said, I don't want you shooting somebody or killing somebody because they broke into your house. I know that you can, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. You're going to feel really bad for shooting somebody because a property. Let's talk about the value of human life. In Genesis chapter 9, verse 5 and 6, that passage emphasizes the sanctity of human life created in the image of God and the serious consequences of taking a life. It highlights the importance of valuing and protecting life, which can be extrapolated to the concept of defending oneself or others, meaning you're going to kill that person and that person is created in the image of God and that life is super important. And so we're going to defend it. But it could also be that you're not supposed to shoot that person. Tell me in the comments. What do you think that is? Because I'm learning from you guys too, because I think you guys are better at this than I am. There's also the issue of peace and nonviolence. Now, Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." And it encourages a disposition towards peace. But on that hand, cops often refer to this as justifying what we're doing. So Matthew 5:9 is actually on the police officers' national memorial, meaning that we feel that God is blessing us because we're keeping the peace. And I've done violence to stop violence. I've seen people talk about this in two different ways. You got Romans 12, verse 18. Paul's admonition says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone," suggesting a preference for nonviolent resolutions when possible. But I think Paul also kind of acquiesced, knowing that you can't have peace with everybody. Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear what you have to say. Psalm 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble, indicating trust in God's protection. We should definitely go forward with all of this, knowing that God loves us and that he will protect us and take care of us. But I feel that we can still go forth and protect others from violence. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 encourages reliance on God's guidance rather than solely on one's own understanding. And I can tell you, before every shift, I always pray to God to ask him for discernment and to help guide me as I go forth to help protect everybody. I am looking at God's guidance as I go protect everybody that's out there. This last one, role of authorities, is super important to me. It's the one that I used to find comfort as a police officer, and it's Romans 13, 1 through 4. And I know my team is laughing because I bring this up all the time. It discusses the role of governing authorities as agents to carry out God's purpose for order and justice. Now, some interpret this as a basis for organized security measures. Again, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone by talking a little bit about biblical perspectives. I definitely don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to give wrong teaching. I want you guys to let me know. And Jason, I know you're watching. I know you're going to hash it out with me and let me know what you think. All right. That's all I've got for now. I hope this helped you. This is going to be a written article as well that'll have a little bit more information and some documentation that you can go back and refer back to. I recommend that you go to christianwarriortraining.com, subscribe, follow, and get all that information. I put stuff out that's not on video all the time. Lastly, remember your ABCs. Always be caring.